I trusted Jackson with everything in my life. We grew up together, shared our dreams, and when I found Amanda, he was genuinely happy for me. At least that is what I thought. The night before our wedding, I discovered messages between them on his phone. My world shattered when I read his words to her. She was never yours to begin with. I stood there frozen in disbelief, but I did not let them see me break. Before you dive into this story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button to join our community of real-life stories that will make you think twice about who you trust. Jackson and I met in 7th grade when I was the new kid at Seattle Middle School. I was a skinny, awkward 12-year-old with thick glasses and a passion for computers that made me an instant target. On my 3rd day, when some 8th graders cornered me behind the gymnasium, Jackson stepped in. He was already 6 feet tall with the confidence I lacked, and from that day forward we were inseparable. Throughout high school, our friendship only grew stronger. When my parents went through a bitter divorce during sophomore year, I practically lived at his house. His family became my refuge. Jackson stood by me through every hardship, every heartbreak, and every triumph. By the time we graduated, we had already planned to attend the same college and eventually start a tech company together. That dream became reality when we both got accepted to Washington State University. We shared a dorm room freshman year, joined the same computer science club, and spent countless nights coding and dreaming about our future company. Jackson was the visionary with big ideas, while I was the detail-oriented engineer who could bring those ideas to life. It was during our junior year that I met Amanda. She was a business major with a minor in marketing, and we first crossed paths at a campus entrepreneurship fair. I was demonstrating a prototype app our club had developed, and she approached with thoughtful questions about market strategy. She had these incredible blue eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled, and the most genuine laugh I had ever heard. I was smitten instantly, but it took me 3 weeks to work up the courage to ask her out. Jackson actually pushed me to do it, claiming he was tired of hearing me talk about her. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant just off campus. We talked until the staff started stacking chairs on tables around us. From that night on, we were a couple. After graduation, the 3 of us moved to Seattle together. Jackson and I launched our startup with Amanda handling our marketing. Those early years were a beautiful struggle. All of us working 80-hour weeks, eating ramen noodles, and celebrating every small victory. When our company finally secured serious funding in our 3rd year, we celebrated by upgrading from our shared apartment to proper homes. I bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood, while Jackson opted for a downtown condo. Amanda moved in with me, and our relationship only grew stronger through the years. She understood my dedication to our company and supported me through the stressful periods of growth. After 5 years together, during a weekend trip to the San Juan Islands, I proposed on a clifftop overlooking the ocean. She cried happy tears as she said yes. When it came time to choose my best man, there was never any question it would be Jackson. He seemed genuinely thrilled for us, offering to help with wedding planning and insisting on throwing an epic bachelor party. Looking back now, there were signs I should have noticed. Small things like how Jackson would find reasons to meet Amanda for lunch to discuss wedding details, or how she would sometimes go quiet when he entered the room. 2 weeks before the wedding, Jackson threw my bachelor party at his lake house. It was an amazing night with our closest friends, great food and plenty of drinks. Toward the end of the evening, Jackson gave a toast that brought tears to my eyes. He talked about our friendship, about watching me grow from that scared kid in middle school to the man I had become. He called me his brother and said no one deserved happiness more than I did. Everyone raised their glasses, and I felt like the luckiest man alive. The wedding rehearsal dinner was held at an upscale restaurant overlooking Puget Sound. Everything seemed perfect on the surface, but I noticed Amanda checking her phone repeatedly throughout the evening. When I asked if everything was okay, she mentioned wedding jitters and said her mother was texting about last-minute details. I believed her. Why would I not? I also noticed Jackson seemed distracted. He kept excusing himself to take calls, and when he was at the table, he barely engaged in conversations. Around 9, he announced he had an emergency with a client and needed to leave. He apologized profusely, hugged me, and promised to see me at the church tomorrow. About 30 minutes after Jackson left, Amanda said she was exhausted and needed to rest before the big day. She kissed me goodnight and reminded me not to stay out too late. Tradition dictated we sleep apart the night before the wedding anyway, so I did not think much of it when she headed to the bridal suite we had booked at the hotel where many of our guests were staying. I stayed with my groomsmen, enjoying one last night as a bachelor. Around 1 in the morning, my groomsmen and I returned to the hotel. As I was about to enter my room, I received a text from Jackson asking me to come to his room immediately. He said he needed to talk to me about something important. Despite the late hour and the drinks in my system, concern for my best friend outweighed my fatigue. I knocked on his door several times, but there was no answer. After waiting a few minutes, I tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. I was about to leave when I noticed his door was actually slightly ajar. I pushed it open and called his name, but the room was empty. His suitcase was there, along with his laptop bag from work. On the nightstand, his phone lit up with a notification. I should not have looked. Every fiber of my being knows I should have respected his privacy. But something in my gut told me I needed to see that message. The notification was from Amanda, and the preview simply said, "He is still with the guys. Come back." A coldness spread through my body as I picked up the phone. It was unlocked, probably because Jackson had been using it recently. The message thread with Amanda was open, and what I saw destroyed me in an instant. There were hundreds of messages dating back months. Intimate exchanges, plans to meet, in secret discussions about their feelings for each other. I scrolled up, hoping to find some explanation, some context, that would make this anything other than what it appeared to be. Instead, I found only more betrayal. I read about how they had been meeting at his condo while I was traveling for work, how they had developed feelings for each other that they could not deny, how they planned to tell me eventually, but could never find the right time. The most recent messages confirmed my worst fears. They were together now in her bridal suite the night before our wedding. But the message that broke me completely was from Jackson. "You were always meant to be with me, not him. He never deserved you. This whole engagement has been a mistake. She was never really his to begin with." My hands shook as I took screenshots, sending them to my own phone as evidence. I felt physically ill, like someone had punched through my chest and was squeezing my heart. 5 years with Amanda, 15 years of friendship with Jackson. All of it was a lie. I did not cry. I did not scream. A strange calm washed over me as I made my decision. I needed to see them, to confront them, to hear them admit what they had done. I took the elevator to the floor where the bridal suite was located. Each step down the hallway felt like walking through quicksand, my body heavy with the weight of betrayal. I knocked firmly on the door. There was a long pause, hushed whispers before Amanda called out, asking who it was. I identified myself, and there was another pause before she opened the door. She was wearing a hotel robe, her hair disheveled, her makeup smudged. Behind her, I could see Jackson hurriedly putting on his shirt. Amanda started rambling immediately, saying it was bad luck to see the bride before the wedding, but her voice trailed off when she saw the expression on my face. I walked past her into the room, my eyes locked on Jackson. He did not even have the decency to look ashamed. Instead, he squared his shoulders and met my gaze with defiance. I held up my phone, showing the screenshots I had taken. No one spoke for what felt like an eternity. Finally, I asked the simplest question, why. Amanda burst into tears, claiming it was a terrible mistake, that she had been stressed about the wedding, and things just happened. She swore it was only physical, that she still loved me, that we could work through this. Jackson, however, laughed. Actually laughed. He walked over to Amanda, put his arm around her waist, and said the words, "I will never forget. She was never yours to begin with, Jamie. I have loved her since college. I just let you have your little fantasy for a while." He picked up his own phone and started scrolling through it, then turned the screen toward me with a smirk. More intimate messages, pictures they had sent each other, plans they had made. Amanda pushed his hand down, begging him to stop, then turned to me with pleading eyes. "Jamie, please, it just happened. We never meant to hurt you." I stood there, my entire world collapsing around me, yet I remained outwardly calm. Jackson seemed disappointed by my lack of reaction. He had wanted a scene, a fight, something dramatic to prove his superiority. Instead, I simply nodded, turned around, and walked out the door. As I closed it behind me, I heard Amanda call my name and break into sobs. But it was Jackson's parting shot that echoed in my mind as I walked away. You never could satisfy her the way I can. Maybe you should thank me for taking her off your hands before you embarrassed yourself as a husband. I returned to my room, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. For hours I did not move. I did not cry. I simply stared at the wall, processing what had happened and what I needed to do next. By the time the first light of dawn broke through the curtains, I had my plan. I got up, showered, and dressed, as if it were any normal day. I called the wedding photographer and asked her to meet me earlier than planned. I also contacted the videographer with the same request. When they arrived at my room at 6:30, I explained the situation calmly and asked if they could document what would happen next. Both were professionals and agreed, though I could see the sympathy in their eyes. Next, I called my cousin Blake, who was a lawyer. Despite the early hour, he answered and listened as I explained the situation. He advised me on the wedding contracts and deposits, confirming my suspicion that most were non-refundable at this point. However, he pointed out that some vendors might make exceptions given the circumstances. With Blake still on the line, I turned my attention to Jackson's work laptop, which he had left in his hotel room. As the co-founder of our company, I had administrator access to all our systems. What I discovered next turned my personal tragedy into something much larger. There were financial records showing Jackson had been embezzling from our company for over a year, diverting funds to a personal account and falsifying reports to cover his tracks. Blake whistled when I described what I had found. "That is corporate fraud," he said. "You need to secure that evidence and contact the board immediately." By 7 a.m., I had emailed our company board with the evidence and requested an emergency meeting. I also sent messages to all our wedding guests apologizing for the last-minute cancellation without going into details. I simply stated that circumstances beyond my control had made it impossible for the wedding to proceed. At 7:30, I asked both sets of parents to meet me in the hotel restaurant for breakfast. Amanda's parents arrived first, concerned about the urgent summons. My own mother and father, despite being divorced, came together and sat across from them. The tension was palpable as I approached the table, with the photographer discreetly positioning herself nearby. I began gently thanking them all for their support and contributions to what should have been the happiest day of my life. Then, as kindly as possible, I told them the wedding was canceled because I had discovered Amanda and Jackson together the night before. The reactions were as expected: shock, disbelief, and then anger. Amanda's father demanded proof, which I reluctantly provided by showing them some of the more innocuous messages. Her mother began to cry, while my own parents moved to comfort me. As we were speaking, my phone began buzzing with notifications. The company board had seen my evidence and was taking immediate action. Jackson's access to all company systems had been revoked, and security was being sent to his condo to recover any company property. An emergency board meeting was scheduled for noon to discuss next steps. By 8 a.m., I had spoken with the hotel manager about canceling the reception. Given the circumstances, he agreed to refund a portion of the deposit, which was more than I had expected. Several other vendors also showed unexpected compassion when I explained the situation. At 8:30, my phone rang. It was Jackson. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again and again. I finally answered on the 6th attempt. "What did you do?" he demanded, his voice shaking with rage. I simply replied I woke up and chose dignity. He began shouting about how I had no right to access his laptop, that I was violating his privacy, that he would sue me. I let him rant until he ran out of steam. "The board has seen the evidence of your embezzlement," I said calmly. "They are meeting at noon to discuss criminal charges. As for privacy, I think you gave up any right to that when you slept with my fiancée the night before our wedding." There was a long silence before he spoke again, his voice suddenly desperate. "Jamie, man, we can work this out. It was just a mistake. The money was a temporary loan. I was going to pay it back. Goodbye, Jackson," I said, and ended the call. At 9 a.m., I received a text from Amanda, begging to talk. I did not respond. At 9:15, she appeared in the hotel lobby, still in yesterday's clothes, eyes red from crying. When she saw me sitting calmly with my parents, she rushed over. "Jamie, please," she said, tears streaming down her face. "We need to talk about this. What you did is extreme. Canceling everything, telling our parents. This is between us." My mother started to stand ready to defend me, but I placed a gentle hand on her arm. "I could handle this." "There is no us anymore, Amanda," I said softly. "And no, this was not just between us. This involved everyone who was coming to celebrate our life together. A life that was built on lies." She tried to argue that one mistake should not erase 5 years together, that we could go to counseling, that she had just been scared of commitment. I listened until she finished. "It was not one mistake," I finally said. "The messages I saw went back months. You both betrayed me repeatedly and would have continued to do so. Please respect me enough not to lie anymore." She left in tears, and I felt nothing but a hollow emptiness where love had once been. By noon, news had spread through our social circle. Friends called and texted offering support. The groomsmen who had been preparing to stand with me at the altar instead gathered in my hotel room with pizza and beer. They helped me pack up wedding gifts to be returned and listened as I talked through my feelings. At 2 p.m., I received a call from the board chairman. The emergency meeting had concluded, and they had voted unanimously to remove Jackson from the company. They were proceeding with legal action regarding the embezzled funds. The chairman expressed his personal sympathies about the wedding and assured me the company would stand behind me. By 5 p.m., what should have been our wedding ceremony time, I was on a plane heading to my family's cabin in Montana. I needed space-time to think and distance from the wreckage of my life in Seattle. As the plane took off, I finally allowed myself to cry for everything I had lost. 6 months passed in what felt like both an eternity and an instant. The first few weeks at the cabin were a blur of grief, anger, and disbelief. I hiked for hours in the mountains, exhausting my body, in hopes of quieting my mind. I limited my communication with the outside world to necessary business calls and brief check-ins with family. After the initial shock wore off, I began the slow process of rebuilding. I started therapy with a counselor in the nearby town, driving down the mountain twice a week to talk through my trauma. She helped me understand that what happened was not a reflection of my worth but of Jackson and Amanda's characters. Meanwhile, the legal proceedings against Jackson moved forward. He was formally charged with embezzlement and fraud. The evidence was overwhelming, and his lawyers advised him to accept a plea deal. He would serve 18 months in a minimum security facility and pay full restitution to the company. Amanda reached out several times during those months. Her first emails were defensive, trying to justify her actions. Later, they turned apologetic as the reality of what she had lost set in. Jackson had abandoned her as soon as his legal troubles began, blaming her for distracting him and causing his downfall. She found herself alone, her reputation in tatters, shunned by many of our mutual friends. I eventually responded to one of her emails, not out of forgiveness, but from a place of closure. I acknowledged her apology without accepting it, and wished her well in rebuilding her life, just as I was rebuilding mine. That was the last time we communicated. When I finally returned to Seattle, it was to a company transformed. With Jackson gone, I stepped into a more prominent leadership role. Our team rallied around me, and we launched a new product line that exceeded all revenue projections. Business success could not heal my personal wounds, but it provided structure and purpose during a difficult time. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I joined a hiking group and a tech meetup, pushing myself to be social when all I wanted was solitude. Slowly, laughter returned to my life. I began to see my experience not as an ending, but as a painful but necessary redirection. 1 year after what should have been my wedding day, I received news that Jackson had been released early for good behavior. That same week, I closed on a new house in a different neighborhood, symbolically, leaving behind the last physical space connected to my old life. I did not look for another relationship right away. Instead, I focused on building stronger boundaries and understanding the warning signs I had missed. When I eventually did meet someone new, a landscape architect named Sophia, who designed public parks, I approached the connection with cautious optimism. We took things slowly, building a foundation of honesty and respect before anything else. Looking back now, I realized that losing what I thought was my future actually led me to what I truly needed. The betrayal revealed truths about Jackson, Amanda, and myself that would have remained hidden otherwise. It forced me to confront my tendency to trust too easily and to ignore red flags out of loyalty. The most important lesson I learned was that dignity cannot be taken from you, only surrendered. In those dark hours when I discovered their betrayal, I could have chosen rage, revenge, or despair. Instead, I chose to act with integrity to protect myself without becoming someone I would later regret. Life has a way of revealing people's true characters through crisis. Jackson and Amanda showed theirs in their betrayal. I had to discover mine in the aftermath. And while I would never choose to experience such pain again, I am grateful for the strength and wisdom it eventually brought me. Trust is never about blind faith. It is about choosing carefully who deserves your vulnerability and maintaining your self-respect regardless of how others behave. The night before my wedding taught me that painful truth, but the years since have taught me something more valuable. Resilience is finding light even in the darkest betrayal. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to something better in your life? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes our deepest wounds become our greatest sources of growth. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of overcoming life's unexpected challenges. Thank you for listening. And remember that your response to hardship reveals your character far more than the hardship itself.